Once we understand the deep truth of who we are, it changes our story. The best science of the modern world, number one, it's telling us the universe is alive and it is conscious. The science is also showing us that we are not the product of random processes, random mutation, and we're much more than lucky biology. The data fails us. Something extraordinary happened 200,000 years ago. We're made to heal. We are wired to thrive. We are wired to heal. And I'm going to offer a little bit different way of thinking about our bodies. I have nothing to lose by sharing the truth of what I've found as a researcher in peer-reviewed science. I'm not beholden to any organization or any academic organization or any corporation. And when it comes to science, science is designed to be constantly updated. Science is designed, as we understand, we have an understanding at one point in time, and we fully expect that at some point a new discovery may change. It may add to that discovery or it may invalidate that discovery. But the point is, science is designed to be constantly updated. And where we find ourselves now, unfortunately, is that science has been hijacked by corporations. Science has been hijacked by religions, by politics, by financial institutions. They're cherry picking data. And this is where we owe it to ourselves to go to the core of what the science is telling us, about our core. And this is the really good news. I mean, I am passionate about this because it changes everything. Once we understand the deep truth of who we are, it changes our story. And that is where we begin anew. And I think we all sense that that's happening right now. So I'm going to go, you were talking about your time, I believe you said in the 70s, Columbia. Yeah. I'm going to go back when I was in school in the 50s, 1950s, 1960s. The story that I was taught in the early 1970s, the story that I was taught, and I'm a systems thinker. So I'm going to look at the big picture and I'm going to zero right in on our direct experience within that big picture. I was taught that we live in a universe that's dead and inert. It's a universe that happened by luck, by accident, when all of exactly the right parameters aligned in exactly the right way and exactly the right time to give us what we have today. And within that dead inert universe, I was taught that we as humans are the product of an accident of biology, what's called lucky biology, random mutations that have led to us being who we are today through a process that I was taught was made possible through competition and conflict. I was taught that competition in nature and conflict is what assured the success of our species, our ability to win out over other species. All right, now that is a broad brushstroke overview of the old story. Now I'm going to contrast that, the new story. The best science of the modern world, number one, it's telling us the universe is alive and it is conscious, that we live in a living universe where rather than being the rare exception, you would expect life to occur because we are a living and connected universe. The new science is showing us, and this is so powerful, that the fundamental rule of nature that Charles Darwin in 1859, when he released his theory of the origins of the origin of species, was the title of the book he released in 1859, and he put forth this theory that the fundamental rule of nature is competition and conflict, and that we live in this world of scarcity. We've got to fight for our survival, and he coined that. He named it survival of the strongest. And those are his exact words that were later interpreted, and he changed it survival of the fittest in his original manuscript. And this is important because this reflects his thinking. So when I say this to young people in an audience, they say, cool, Greg, 1859 was a long time ago. So what? We're in 21st century. We got the internet, we've got TikTok, high tech. Who cares? What difference does it make? And it's a good question. And my answer surprises them. Because what I say to them is yes, we're in a modern world, but the foundations of our society were put forth in the late 1800s and the early 1900s based upon the story that was believed at that time. the story that we are separate, the story that nature's based, the fundamental nature is competition. So it's no surprise. Our economic system that's collapsing and is so unfair is based upon this false assumption of competition. Corporate structure is based upon the competition. The way we share vital resources, food, energy, water, medicine with our global family are based upon this false assumption. And now it's being tested because the world has changed. And those ideas that worked sort of in the other world are failing us in this world. And the good news is that we have a new story to fall back on. And it's a story that's based in truth, honest, factual science. It's a science that is rarely shared in the mainstream. And that's the big picture. And now when it comes to us, the science is also showing us that we are not the product of random processes, random mutation, and we're much more than lucky biology. Now, I have to be very clear when I say what I'm about to say. I'm a scientist. I'm a degreed geologist, is my first degree. And I am not a denier when it comes to evolution. I believe in evolution. I've seen it in the fossil record for many forms of life, for plants, animals, and insects. The data does not support evolution as the story of anatomically modern human emergence, what are called AMH, anatomically modern humans. The data fails us. Something extraordinary happened 200,000 years ago. Modern humans emerged upon the earth. And I'm saying this now because it's going to be important when we get into our potential. Because in the old story, we have been led to believe that we emerged on this planet in a biologically primitive form. And through a long, slow, gradual process, we have evolved to the point we are today. This is where the science fiction has become science fact. Many of our viewers probably remember the first movie, Jurassic Park, the best Jurassic Park, when scientists were able to extract the DNA from the fossilized remains of ancient forms of life. That was science fiction when that movie came out. It now is science fact. We have the ability to extract the DNA from the bone marrow of fossilized remains of ancient forms of life, including those that I was taught were my ancestors that I descended from when I was in school back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And here's the deal. It is like an earthquake that has sent shockwaves through the world of evolution and biology, because what the DNA is telling us, Shamini, we compare the genome of the forms of life that we used to think that we descended from with our genome today. We haven't changed. We emerged, we appeared mysteriously on Earth 200,000 years ago with all of the extraordinary potentials and capabilities that we have right now, with the neocortex, the expanded neocortex that we have today, with the body proportions, with the nervous system, with the cardiac, intrinsic cardiac neurons, the neurons in the heart, all of the things that make us so extraordinary today. And I'll just break this down for the average person. These are the abilities or the structure that give us the abilities for uniquely human things like sympathy and empathy and compassion and the ability to self-regulate our own biology. We appeared with these 200,000 years ago, and we haven't changed. And the reason this is so important is because in the theory of evolution, there is a corollary that says, it was put forth by a man named Alfred Wallace, a colleague of Charles Darwin. The corollary says that nature never over-endows. And what that means is that nature only gives a species what it needs to survive in that moment. And the problem is we showed up with these extraordinary potentials, light years beyond what we needed 200,000 years ago. They were already with us, already developed, already intact. They did not develop slowly, gradually over a long period of time. And these are the potentials that we're going to talk about in this conversation, because our ability to access these potentials is what changes our story in the presence of a changing world. Wow. So we'll go into what those are, but I just want to stop right there and ask if that makes sense if there's
It's
anything we need to fill
fascinating.
in as we go
No,
forward here.
it's fascinating, Greg. This is amazing. I mean, what a key discovery that you've just shared with us. And I don't know, I personally wasn't aware of this myself, and I don't know if many others were aware of it too. This is really important, and it almost reminds me of, the kind of party line not too long ago about junk DNA and then our discovery of epigenetics, right? So there's some linkages here that I think are really interesting because where we were taught that, there were just parts of, of our genetic regulation that didn't matter. It's quite interesting to put it in the context of what you just shared because you can look at it from, different points of view. We evolve according to our environments, and yet what you're sharing is the science is actually saying that we've come in with tremendous potential to adapt to all kinds of environments, and not only that, but to create our own environments based on our reaching of that
Absolutely,
potential.
absolutely. And the scientists are in a tough place right now. And in the world of science, there are a lot of different perspectives in the world of science, but these are from peer-reviewed journals. National Proceeding of the Academy of Sciences, the volume Genetics, is one of the places they took a really close look at this. When we appeared as anatomically modern humans, there were mutations in our DNA, in our genome. Human chromosome number 2 is one of the most astounding. It is the product of a fusion of pre-existing chromosomes that after the fusion happened, genes were added, genes were taken away to stabilize that fusion. It gives us the extraordinary neocortex that we have and the ability for empathy, sympathy, compassion, self-regulation. Chromosome 7 is what gives us chromosome number 7 in primates. 75 million years it was stable. And exactly 200,000 years ago, there was a little switch that linked the brain with the tongue, with the mouth, that gives us the ability for complex language and speech. I mean, you know that I'm a musician as well as being an author and a scientist. And one of the questions I had as a musician and as a scientist is, we look at a chimpanzee that we share 98% of their DNA. But my question is, why doesn't a chimpanzee sing? You will never hear a chimpanzee sing Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven. And I laughed. I asked myself that question, and I laughed at myself for asking. But it was a serious question. If we share only 2% of our DNA is different, how come those chimps aren't out there singing songs? And the reason is because of this shift. And the irony, what some people call an irony, some people call it luck, is that and there's others, chromosome 7, chromosome 2, gene TBR1, all of these happened at exactly the same time. That is not Darwin's idea of evolution. So scientists say that there was an intervention, but they have to leave it at that because they cannot say, science is not equipped to go beyond telling us they can tell us what happened, but they can't necessarily interpret how or why. So and this is, as I say, rock solid science. We often don't hear about it. So what does this mean for us? We're in a healing summit. It means that we're made to heal. We are wired to thrive. We are wired to heal. And I'm going to offer a little bit different way of thinking about our bodies. When I was in school, I was taught that we are these vulnerable, frail, tissue-based bodies that are in constant need of defending ourselves from the very environment that we come from, that we're supposed to be afraid of that environment.
Mhm.
And in that thinking, the world looks like a scary place.
It's the
And
wartime model, right, Greg? I mean, this is
it
the pathogenic, do or die.
it is. It
System.
is. And in that world, we feel that we need to design things outside of us, external technology, to keep us safe and to empower us and help us reach our great potential. You and I are the product of that thinking in that world, and we all are. We're, to whatever degree we're aware of it, that's what's happening now. So I'm going to offer another perspective, and this is based on what the science is showing us. The average human, whatever average is, but the average human, it said, has about 50 trillion cells, give or take, in the human body. So we know that. I'm going to offer a little bit different way to think about our bodies, and this will lead to the empowering nature of where we're going with this. Every one of those 50 trillion cells has an electrical potential about 0.07 volts. And you say, well, that's not very much. And I say, well, you're right, until you do the math. 0.07 volts times 50 trillion cells. And think about that. We have an electrical potential in our bodies about 3.5 trillion volts of electrical potential. What would happen if we could harness that and direct it toward our own healing, or toward our longevity enzymes that we all have in our bodies, or toward our intuition, or toward our resilience, or toward deep states of inner knowing that are revealed in so many of our most ancient and cherished spiritual traditions? Well, if we could do that, but it doesn't end there. Every one of those 50 trillion cells, it functions as a transistor, just like in a resistor, just like the old transistors and resistors in our old television sets. Some of you remember those, or the old telephones. Now they're miniaturized on to the chips in the computer that is in the machine you're watching me on, or on the mobile phone. Every one of our cells does that. We are resistors, we are transistors. Every one of our cells is a capacitor. It stores information and releases it when it reaches a certain threshold. Every cell in our body releases photons of light and is a photon receptor. We receive photons of light. Light is information. We are constantly interacting with our external, we call the external environment, the field, through this exchange of collapsing and emerging photons. Every cell in our body has antennae on the outside that are attuned to electromagnetic frequencies, and the very DNA and the genes in the DNA also function as antennae. We are gated circuits. We store and retrieve information in memory, just like we do on the computers, and so much more. And here's where this gets really interesting. What I'm describing, we are what is now being called a soft technology. So we are not hard computer chips and wires and chemicals. We are cell membranes, ion potentials across cell walls. We are neurons, and all this is so awesome. But if you're sleeping, this is a good time to wake up, because all of the external technology that we are in awe of today, and we have amazing external technology, not one function in that external technology has been developed that does not mimic what we already do in the cells of our bodies, except we do it better. We are extraordinary soft technology. And now here's what links this information to this program. We're the only form of life that we know of today on this planet. Maybe others, I'm sure there is in other worlds, but in this planet, we're the only form of life that can consciously self-regulate our internal technology. And what I mean by that, we're the only form of life that can sit down in a moment in time and say, in this moment, I choose to self-regulate and strengthen my immune system. Well, who doesn't want that in the age of a pandemic? We're the only form of life that can choose to awaken those longevity enzymes that are with us until the last breath that we take in the new stem cells. We're the only form of life that can say, I choose to consciously access deep states of intuition rather than allowing it to simply happen spontaneously whenever it does. We're the only form of life that can create resilience to change. Man, who doesn't need that? Our world is changing faster than we can track it. It's wearing people out emotionally. It's causing depression. People are taking their lives because they don't know how to deal with this change. We self-regulate our inner technology, our soft technology, through thought, feeling, emotion, belief, breath, and focus. And those are the elements that we have studied in some of our most ancient and cherished spiritual traditions, who have preserved many of these principles that now parallel what is being revealed in the laboratory as scientists begin to understand this potential. So what we're talking about, and Shamini, I'm the first to admit this. This is so different from what I was taught, but I have to be honest with myself. I think we owe it to ourselves to be honest with ourselves about who we are. And when I began as a scientist to read what was revealed, I had to make a choice. Do I honor the storyline of the past in academia? For me, I chose to leave academia for that reason. And some of your other, I can't speak for them, but I know some of your other speakers have done the same thing.
I completely understand.
Yeah, yeah, because we made a choice
Yeah.
to share this information truthfully, honestly, factually, directly with our audience, rather than maybe writing a white paper and having it relegated to an obscure journal that nobody's ever going to read,
Yeah.
for 20 years. So what this means, this changes our story, and now I'm just going to bring in one more piece, then we can dive into this. Ultimately, people say, Greg, if this is true, why don't we know it? Why don't we use it? Here's the question that's up for all of us. What I just said to you is rock solid science. These are deep truths, they're facts, well documented in my books, in the scientific literature, if you can read that scientific literature. The reason, and this is what's up for us right now, it all comes down to love. The question, do we love ourselves enough to live our lives in the way and make the choices in our lives to nourish our bodies and move our bodies and invite the breath of life into our bodies? Do we love ourselves enough to live our lives in a way that allows us to be the best versions of ourselves that are possible? And when we say yes to that, changes everything. It changes our relationship to a global pandemic. It changes our relationship to politics, to science, to religion. It changes everything. And for me, Shamini, this is perhaps the most empowering thing that is up for us right now, is embracing the deep truth of our existence. So does that make sense if I say it in that way?
It's so beautiful. I mean, I just want to summarize some of what you've shared because it's so powerful. You know, you've shared with us that essentially research has already demonstrated that we come in with tremendous potential. That the
Yeah.
story that we were told, that we evolve slowly over time, that our genes sort of respond to our environment, there's evidence to suggest that that may not be true, that actually we've come in for thousands and thousands of years with potential. There's evidence that, there's almost sort of a lightning fast shift, as you described, in, about 200,000 years ago, of that shift that actually showed the connections between our brain and our mouth, our ability to use language. By the way, when you said that, my thought immediately went to Saraswati and Saraswati Nadi, because there's a description of a nadi, that is an energy channel in the body, that describes exactly what you were talking about. So quite interesting. But most importantly, I think what you're sharing with us is that the evidence has been there. And Greg, as you know, our nonprofit, the Consciousness and Healing Initiative, has been very jazzed about forwarding area in the biofield, which is still
Sure.
very controversial in mainstream science. So much of what you shared about the cellular potential, the cellular communication, we also know that this is true not only in how we heal ourselves, but how we heal others. Now, obviously, the pathway is to heal ourselves, and as we heal ourselves, we heal others as well. We're no longer going to engage in this wounded healer sort of paradigm that we've also
Right.
been in for some time. Just to pepper that, there's some recent research that, again, as you say, is rock solid, with what we call entangled fish, that is showing that, if this is the bystander effect. So they've actually demonstrated this. You can put two fish together and they swim together, right? So they're swimming together in a tank. You take one set of fish out and then you irradiate them. You kind of put radiation energy on them. And the other set of fish that did not engage again with those fish in a completely different tank are showing this bystander effect, where it's like they've been irradiated. And everyone's throwing up their hands like, how do we explain this? We don't have a better explanation than entanglement at the moment, but
Right.
it's just showing us how powerful we are. And as you said, why haven't we dove into this power? Because we've been force fed these models of separatism, of overemphasis of what we call pathogenesis. The invader is outside of me, instead of I'm in harmony. If I'm out of harmony, I can actually bring myself back into harmony. I can bring my community back into harmony. We have that power and that agency. And as you say, the stakes have never been higher. And we do still have what we might call that old paradigm thinking, that sort of force fed idea of separatism that is driving much suffering in our society.
Yeah.
And this is playing out, you say, in how we're viewing and using technology. And the dangers, I think, of what you're sharing is that if we continue on this sort of fear-based separatist mentality and we engage in technology this way, we may actually lose some of our humanness. So tell us about that.
Absolutely. And I want to talk about that. And before I do, I think it's important. Some of our viewers are very familiar with my work, and this may be the first time that we've ever been together. And I want to thank everyone for sharing a part of your day with us so that we can have this conversation. But I want to be really clear. Many of the powers that be do not know what we're talking about. So our elected officials, regardless of how high the level is that they are in our local or state or national or global governance, some of them do, but many of them are not aware of what we're talking about. So the choices and decisions that they're making are based upon the old story. And this is why I say the stakes have never been higher. We have a planet at stake, and life on the planet is at stake. And I think what's important is, rather than judging those people for the choices that they're making or judging ourselves, and there is a conditioning, it's based upon this story of competition, struggle, and separation. We have been taught, Shamini, to demonize the things that no longer work for us. We've been taught to demonize and hate, to justify moving in a new direction and making new decisions. From my perspective, I think it may not serve us to do that. We all have had a lifetime of feeling inadequate, of our stories telling us, that we're not worthy, of right and wrong and good and bad, and comparing ourselves to success and failure. And all of that only works if you have some model that you are comparing yourself to. But if you let that model go, then everything we've done in the past is simply our experience. It's our learning curve. And we have to say that it worked because we're here now. It worked to get us where we are. And now that we have new understandings, we can let those understandings go, bless them, let them go with grace. It's not so much about a mistake or about goodness or badness or rightness or wrongness or revenge or any of that. This is a new day. It's a new world. We are perhaps more unified in that understanding than we have been for a very long time. The whole world knows that we're in this together and that we're going somewhere. But here's the beauty of this conversation. Where we're going hasn't happened yet because we're creating it through what we understand right now. And as we embrace these understandings that we're talking about, and they have a lot of implications. They have social and political implications, certainly implications in terms of energy and where our energy in the planet comes from and how we feed one another and how we heal one another. So story is a big deal. So if we can move from this point forward without judging ourselves or judging others in the past, I think it's a really healthy way to do this. Now, one of the places where this is coming up, because the world is changing and because of our story that has taught us that we are powerless victims of a world that we cannot control, there is a greater desire to create stuff out there, external technology, to replace our soft technology so that we feel good and safe in the world, feel good about ourselves, feel safe in the world. And we're also being told that we need this external technology to achieve our greatest potentials. And in whole, in mass, that movement is being called the transhumanism movement. And it's a very complex conversation, more than I can really do justice to in this brief conversation. And I want to be very clear about this. I am from a high-tech world. I worked on the Star Wars Defense Initiative during the Cold War years, where I saw some of the most advanced laser systems and radar systems and communication systems. And I'm not anti-technology, but here's the thing, and this is a conversation that scientists have had since I've been in the scientific world. There are two schools of thought when it comes to scientists. Some scientists believe that because we figure out how to do something, it gives us the license to go forward full throttle and do that. Other scientists say because we figure out how to do something, doesn't mean that we need to carry it to its greatest expression, that we need to throttle that discovery with things like morality, with human values. And this is where technology and transhumanism is coming in. The technology is available right now to replace much of the human body. And because the story has led people to believe, some people, that carbon-based life, that's us, we're carbon-based life, is imperfect, that carbon-based life is flawed, that we are the product of lucky biology in a lucky universe to begin with. Their thinking is that we need to replace this flawed carbon-based body with machines. Now, that's a slippery slope. And I'll tell you the reason I'm concerned about this is because this thinking is sweeping some societies very quickly, and you're not even hearing about it in other societies. And some Eastern Asian societies are embracing this technology much faster. And you're not even hearing much about it in the mainstream here in the West. Here's the slippery slope. We've all heard the expression, use it or lose it. And our biology functions in a very similar way. We are this extraordinary, highly advanced, technologically sophisticated, soft technology that has the ability to self-regulate, self-heal, to heal our own bodies, to regenerate, to rejuvenate in a way that no other form of life has. And when we begin to replace the neurons and glands and the blood and the chemicals in our bodies with computer chips and wires and other chemicals, we begin to lose those capabilities. They atrophy if we don't use them. Now, in one generation, I'll give a specific example here in a minute, but in one generation, you might say, okay, no big deal. My kids may not make the same choice, but here's the thing. This is the way evolution does work. In one generation, if we stop using certain classes of neurons, then the connections of those neural networks begin to atrophy. And the next generation, the body says, well, I guess we don't need those anymore. And they may stop producing altogether. And we're actually seeing this happen as technology is beginning to replace, in some societies, our most intimate human relationships. And I'm talking about human intimacy in terms of emotional intimacy and sexual intimacy. It's being replaced by technology and games. And what's happening in those societies is the birth rate is declining because infertility is increasing and sperm counts are dropping. Use it or lose it. We have right now the ability to implant a computer chip. So this isn't theory, it's available right now. To implant a computer chip into the human brain that gives us direct access to the hard drive of our computer without the use of a keyboard. So when I say this in an audience of young people, I have no children of my own, so I learn a lot from the young people in my audience. What they say, the first thing they say, wait a minute, you mean I could do my gaming without ever using a keyboard?
Cool.
Sweet. Well, cool is my word. Their word is sweet, and they have other words I probably won't use here, but because they've never been taught how precious and rare, and I'll just go the extra mile and say sacred, not from a religious perspective, but from a deeply spiritual perspective, how sacred this internal technology is. And if you've not been taught that, then your response would be, why not? Why not put a chip in my brain so I can access my computer hard drive? So it's being offered recreationally. And this is the thing, if we embrace these technologies recreationally in one generation, what is it that we're compromising? And so again, I'm going to be clear. I'm not saying it's right, wrong, good or bad. I'm not saying do it or don't do it. What I am saying is that we need a cautionary pause because we are at the crossroad of transhumanism and biology, what it means to be human. When we compromise our humanness and those abilities begin to atrophy, we need to know how much of this is the question, how much of ourselves do we give away to the technology? How much of our humanness do we give to the technology? We can't answer that until we know who we are. And we're only beginning to understand. That's why this summit is so important. We're only beginning to understand the deep potential of what it means to be human. And my sense is that when that knowledge becomes very, very clear, we will not want to give away those extraordinary potentials to the machines and the technology.